Look, I gotta tell you, Brady, I am enamored with Lamar Jackson. His development is am I crazy? All right, let me ask you this. Am I crazy for thinking that he is rapidly developing not just as a runner in this league, but also as a passer? And that I think the work that Greg Roman and John Harbaugh and that offense have done, if they can really get some weapons around him, he is going to be unstoppable in a couple of years.
He's progressed. I don't know that I'm walking away right now saying that he could just purely play from the pocket and be able to win the amount of football games I think they need to in order to win the division and go off into the playoffs. But he has progressed. I think we saw that early in the season, and at times you see it now intermittently throughout the course of games. But teams are still trying to figure out how you stop him running the football. That so far has been the Achilles heel for most of the opponents they've gone up against when you look at his rushing numbers and where he stands amongst even the running backs in the league right now. I try to sell this to people this every single week. In order to stop design quarterback runs, you have to not bring just one guy into the box, but two guys, right? You want to have an advantage for one guy down for the running back to have the additional defender. So the offensive line and the rest of the offense has to figure out how they want to block up and who they're going to leave free. But then when you have to incorporate the quarterback as part of that, that evens up those numbers. So you have to bring down a second guy into the box to stop the run. When you do that, you're talking about man-to-man coverage on the outside, no safety help. So theoretically, what it's done is it's changed how defenses can play this team. And I think they've opted to say, you know what? We're not going to expose ourselves to try to be one-on-one with Miles Boykin all game or Hollywood Brown when he's back in there healthy because of his elite speed, or even a tight end like Mark Andrews. And so because of that, I think they're seeing a little bit more of a zone coverage. They're trying to mix in a little bit more a variety of fronts, coverages, and pressures to see if they can just straight up confuse him. But bottom line, it's still not working. And I think eventually someone's going to come up with a game plan, kind of like we saw versus the Chiefs, where they started to slow down Patrick Mahomes in that offense. Someone's going to do the same with Lamar Jackson, and then they're going to start to get more accustomed to where his flaws are and what works. But the thing is you've got a young group of pass catchers on the outside. As they continue to improve and get better, it's only going to make his life a little bit easier. So he should be talked about in regards to being a part of the MVP conversation with the way he's led his team. What he's doing as far as running, throwing the football is incredible. It's going to be difficult for teams to stop. However, eventually he's going to have to play from the pocket, or eventually he's going to get banged up. These guys are too physical in this league. So we'll see if it can last through 16 games this season. My bet is it probably won't, either at this rate with the way he's running the football or him being able to maintain his health.
To quote the great Bart Scott, I can't wait. By the way, Brinson, we need that as a drop until the Ravens face the Patriots in a couple weeks, because then we'll get an idea of what the game plan is going to be to beat Lamar Jackson. That said, Brady, I absolutely love Lamar Jackson, and I say that as a Steelers homer. He is, in my mind, in 2 or 3 years, going to be the best player in the NFL. Just the things he can do. And as you point out, he's not actually blowing people away with his passing numbers. That said, when you watch him play, the things he's able to do with the ball, not just running, but when he has to throw the ball, he can be accurate. And he wears out the tight end. Mark Andrews had 3 drops in that game, should have had a touchdown. That skewed the numbers a little bit. Hayden Hurst is getting involved. And when Hollywood Brown comes back, as you point out, he's the deep threat, even if you're not throwing him the ball. And then there's everything that Lamar Jackson does behind this line of scrimmage, where you literally can't get your hands on him when he decides he's going to start juking and jucking and shiving to beat the pass rush, and then he's in the open field, and that's a wrap. That's a 20-yard gain automatic. And I just think he is so incredibly fun to watch. And sort of like Russell Wilson, he doesn't take a lot of huge hits, and that's critical to keeping him upright and him on the field, obviously. But I do want to see what Bill Belichick has in store, because that will be the ultimate arbiter of just how good Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are at the midway point of the season.
He's so tough to prepare for. It's hard for people to understand, because when you've got an athlete like him, I mean, really, I think the best comparison for him once he gets downfield running is Michael Vick. And so in order to prepare for that during the course of the week, because you don't have NFL rosters littered with those guys at the quarterback spot, you typically bring in a running back or wide receiver. And so those guys are playing scout team, and you're only allowed to be in full pads anyways once a week. So even then, you're not practicing tackling and hitting that guy and taking him to the ground during the course of the week, which is really hard to do in the course of a game, as you kind of noted and pointed out, Ryan. But then you're getting a look from a guy who may be a good athlete and maybe he can run similar to Lamar to some degree, but you're not getting a realistic look at what it's going to be like to stop him throwing the football. Or if a pass play breaks down, he scrambles and makes a play, it's not going to be the same sort of athlete. So that's the difficulty of taking on, not just from a scheme perspective, as I pointed out earlier, with how many guys you want to allocate towards the box to stop the run or stop his ability to run, but also the preparation. You have 1 day a week in full pads now, so you're not hitting, so you're not prepared for how big and physical he is as a runner once he gets to the second level, and then getting a realistic look that's going to be anything like once you get him. You know, I would venture to say there's a lot more drop back quarterbacks that can mimic even some of the best drop back quarterbacks in the NFL than there is guys who can be on scout team and mimic what Lamar Jackson can do, both throwing and running the football.
All right, 2 follow-up questions for either of you. One, ask Ryan this first. Can he win the MVP this year?
He has to beat the Patriots. That's to start there, and then they have to make a playoff run. The way he's playing, the numbers don't jump out at you in terms of the passing. The rushing obviously is there, but I think if they had the same –
everybody.
What's that?
He's 6th in rushing in terms of everybody.
Right, exactly. But this team right now, if the Ravens 2019 went back in time and played the Chargers in that playoff game, I think they win that game by 2 touchdowns. You have to erase from your mind this Chargers team, the 2018 Chargers team. But I think he's improved that much. He's only going to get better, I feel like. Greg Roman's dialing up all the right plays. And we talked about this yesterday, Wilbur. Credit to John Harbaugh for taking chances and thinking outside the box in a league where everyone's really conservative, and he's doing things to give his team the advantage. And that includes Lamar Jackson, to his credit, who insisted on doing that 4th down play that ended up getting him that touchdown to take the lead in the 4th quarter against Seattle.
I'm going to say no, unless we start to see more production and more games like we saw in the beginning of the season where he really was lighting things up down the field. I mean, Patrick Mahomes set the bar last year with 50 touchdown passes. And I think no matter what, we still look at throwing the football from the pocket, and it's really a quarterback-driven award anyway, that ultimately wins it. So if you look at how he's been running the football, I mean, heck, they got a great win on the road versus Seattle this past week, led the team in rushing, was pretty dynamic, you know, in running the football at times. You don't really hear as much buzz about it. It's because he didn't put up the same type of numbers that he did throwing the football like he did earlier this season, for example, when they opened up versus the Miami Dolphins. And granted, it was the Miami Dolphins. We didn't know how bad, quite to the degree how bad they were. But looking back on that performance, you're still watching it saying, wow, look how much he's progressed. Look how much he's gotten better. And so I think for that reason, unless he starts to have those sorts of performances, even if he beats New England, I just think it's going to be hard to give him that award because they're ultimately going to look at his passing stats. And if they don't quite add up or they don't quite compare to an Aaron Rodgers or Mahomes, maybe if he's come back and starting what he's done, or Russell Wilson, I don't think he's winning that award.
Just for the record, he's got more passing yards through 7 games than he had in his 7 starts last year. I can't read for some reason, but he doesn't. I was trying to tell you how he had more rushing yards. He doesn't have more rushing yards. He's running the ball a little bit less. I think you're right, Brady. If he has marginal passing stats, it's gonna be tough. But if he's like the first guy to ever go 3,000, 1,000, maybe there's a chance. How do you think that the Patriots will handle him? Because they play so much man coverage, and if you play all man on the back end, obviously he can light you up by running the ball because you're chasing receivers around. Do you think they'll do some sort of spy situation? Patriots are -6, look ahead line, or 6.5 at Baltimore on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, there might be times when, depending on the situation, right? Because that's what this is all about. It's situational football with Bill Belichick. If in must-passing situations, I would imagine sometimes they may only rush 3 and try to keep a couple spies for him. And with that rush, try to see if they can pressure him or get him to escape the pocket to the guys they want him to go to. That's going to be one of the things I think they see when they can dictate what they're going to do, whether they're going to run or throw the football. By and large, though, I think they're going to have to play more zone. And then they're going to have to play a zone that may put their secondary on islands, but as evidence of that this past Monday night versus the Jets, I think they're okay with doing that. They played a lot of zero coverage, man-to-man, with no safety help. They trust this secondary. They trust their experience. And so for that reason, I'm sure they're going to try to sell out and do all they can to stop Lamar Jackson intermittently throughout the game. They can't do it all the time. I think Greg Roman's too good of a play caller to come up with some counter punches to that, but enough to definitely keep him on his toes and keep him off balance. So Look, it's New England, it's Foxborough. That's a tough place to go in there and play and win, and
I think
so that would be my idea of how that goes.